Disclaimer: this program contains graphic descriptions of real crimes. Viewer discretion is advised. All parties are presumed innocent until proven guilty in court. If you've ever kept a promise too long, you know the ache. It sits behind the ribs like an unsent letter, folded, fragile, and heavier than it should be. That's what these emeralds were, not jewels. A promise, two green hearts beating under glass, and on the night they disappeared, no one heard an alarm. Only a woman whisper, "Please, not like this," to a stranger who could open any door except the one he needed most, his own past. This isn't a story about stealing treasure. It's about returning a truth that was trapped inside it. Night settles on the Louvre like a velvet sheet. The public leaves in a tide. Selfies, hushed awe, shoes that squeak, and the museum exhales into a slower heartbeat. In the Richelieu wing, the emerald earrings attributed to Empress Marie-Louise catch the last sweep of the lights and throw it back as a soft green sigh. A placard behind them does what placards do: tidy history into palatable lines. Napoleon. Empire, parier, it sells you a story that fits in a paragraph. She knows the parts that don't. Her name is Anais de Vaux, junior conservator, 29. The kind of tired that only comes from loving a thing no one else notices. The temperature of a room, the way an LED flickers before a test cycle, the exact angle of a scratch on a silver claw that holds a stone in place. She moves like someone trained by quiet, gentle hands, a mind full of measurements, and she is not thinking about empires tonight. She is thinking about a letter, 3 lines long, signed by a landlord who keeps licking his thumb as he counts the weeks her mother has left in their apartment. It is taped behind a Tuileries postcard on the fridge at home. It has become a metronome in her skull. She doesn't tell anyone, not her brother, not her supervisor, not the museum. She tells the emeralds because the emeralds keep secrets. Her breath fogs a ghost onto the glass as she leans in to log the last readings of the night. Humidity, temperature, surface integrity, all those invisible walls that keep time from chewing through history. "Help me get through this month," she murmurs, half prayer, half habit, "just this one." And then she glances, as she always does, at the hinges, not on the necklace, on the earrings, small, precise, late, Georgian silver. She knows them the way you know the lines on your palm. She knows where the maker tightened his hand. She knows where he relaxed. She knows because her grandmother made her learn. A memory rises like breath held too long, a tin of ribbons, the smell of lavender and rain, an old woman's voice roughened by stories. On the day her grandmother died, she left Anais a drawing. It looked like nothing, 2 tiny earrings sketched in loving, obsessive detail, arrows and measurements, and a circle around the hinge pin. On the back, a sentence written in ink the color of old tea: "Pour celle que j'aimais et pour l'enfant à venir." For the one I loved, and for the child to come. As a child, Anais thought it was romance, the kind that wilts in the wash of real life. As an adult, standing 2 corridors away from the real emeralds, she began to wonder, could the hinge be a door? Could a note be sleeping inside a clasp, the way a heart sleeps inside a chest? No one at the museum believes in rumors. They believe in provenance, but rumors keep breathing, even when you turn out the lights. She finishes her sweep. The corridor is an empty throat, lit in sections, the kind of half light that invites confessions. Somewhere a guard coughs and a vending machine hums. The elevator on the far side lags like it always does when you press 2 and 3 together. The building is a living thing, and she can feel its pulse through the soles of her shoes. She has just signed the last initial on the last line of the last checklist when a maintenance cart whispers around the corner. The man pushing it moves carefully, shoulders rounded against a lifetime of stairs. He wears the same muted uniform everyone in the back corridors wears, gray, forgettable, and he nods at her with the gentle authority of a person who has learned how to take up very little space. "Bonsoir," he says. She answers without looking up. "Bonsoir." She will swear later she has seen him before without ever seeing him at all, in reflections, in the curve of a camera dome, in the chrome of a fire door. Like a watermark present, but only when you tilt the page. He stops by a panel that only a few people touch. The cover comes off with a courteous click. He doesn't hurry. People who don't belong hurry. His hands, when he reaches into the nest of wires, are old and good. Old hands that built things. Old hands that can ask a lock for its name and hear the answer. For a moment, he pauses, just a breath, as if listening to something only he can hear. Then the corridor changes, not black, not a cinematic plunge into void, just dim, as if the museum blinked, as if the air got a degree colder and the green in the glass deepened, like water finding a shadow. Anise's eyes go to the vitrine, muscle memory before thought. The LED on the lock stutters. Anyone else would rate it as nothing. She reads it as a door, thinking about its choices. The man with the cart does not look at her. He walks to the case at a pace so measured it feels like respect. He lifts the panel on the vitrine with the grace of someone who believes the object inside is more alive than he is. His gloved fingertips find the seam. The case sighs. She should shout. She should run. She should be a siren in human skin. Instead, she is very, very quiet, because sometimes your body recognizes a ritual before your brain does. He does not touch the necklace. He reaches, very gently, for the left earring. There is a click so small it is almost a memory. His thumb pivots the hinge. He breathes out, as if letting go of something he's held for years. And there, in the crease of silver, is the impossible thing her grandmother sketched in teak-colored ink, paper, folded so fine it could be moth wing. Hidden in a place only a lover would think to look. He doesn't pocket the jewel. He doesn't flee. He closes the hinge. He returns the earring to its bed. He lowers the glass, settles the seal like a father tucking in a child. The LED catches breath and returns to its steady pulse. The corridor inhales. The lights remember themselves. 30-something seconds, that's all. A space small enough to fit between two heartbeats. He turns and finds her. They stand in the aisle like two confessions facing each other. She sees the thing he has palmed, the tiniest fold of centuries, and he sees the thing she is holding back, a cry and a question and maybe a yes. Her voice arrives as a thread. Please, not like this. It is not a command to stop. It is an appeal to tell the truth out loud. He doesn't run. Thieves run. Couriers take careful steps. He nods toward the service corridor, an old man's nod, a locksmith's invitation, and she follows because some doors you don't let a stranger walk through alone. They step into a supply room that smells like lemon and dust, where everything is labeled and nothing is simple. He rolls out a towel as if preparing an altar. The paper lands on it like a breath. Up close, it is smaller than she wants and bigger than she feared. The fold resists, the way old things that survived their century always do. When it opens, the room becomes a chapel, handwriting neat and deliberate, the kind taught to people who knew their words might outlive them, a date that sits deep inside the empire's ripple, a name, Jean-Baptiste Armand Goldsmith, written with a craftsman's pride. And then the cut that will never stop bleeding, a declaration that the earrings were commissioned not by imperial decree, but for a private promise, that their fee included funds from a house in Leopoldville, liquidated under pressure and stamped with a seal even the empire later called improper. That the goldsmith, ashamed, returned what he could return the only way he knew how. Set in green so it would never go invisible again, a love note, a confession, a restitution document small enough to hide in a hinge and large enough to move a museum. Anise feels the floor tilt, her grandmother's tin, the sketch, the sentence on the back, for the child to come. All of it turns from rumor into weight. She wipes a tear she didn't mean to show. Who are you? He smiles with the sadness of someone who has outlived his own excuses. Etienne, he says, a locksmith, and once a son who didn't arrive in time. He doesn't explain. He doesn't need to. Loss is a language fluent people speak without words. Why didn't you take the earrings? She asks. Because I wasn't sent for them, he answers, I was sent for this. His gaze drops to the paper, and because sometimes the only honest theft is to steal a lie from history. A beat passes, the vending machine clicks. Somewhere a radio hisses back to life in a guard booth. The museum's pulse normalizes. What happens now? She says, now we decide where truth goes when it's finally awake. He doesn't say the other word that has been standing behind them this whole time, patient and smiling. Broker. A man who arranged this verification. A man who will want this paper for reasons that don't include justice. A man who thinks ambiguity is expensive and certainty is priceless. Anais looks at the letter again, at the thin black river of ink crossing 200 years to stand in this light, in this room, on this towel that smells like lemon. The thought that comes up is not brave. It is not cinematic. It is the smallest, truest thing she has ever known. Tell the truth and pay the bill. She nods once. A promise, not to an emperor, not to a museum, not to a man in a suit, but to a woman who sketched a hinge and wrote on the back of the paper in tea-colored ink. I'll help you, she says. He exhales the way a locked door does when it decides to become a doorway, and somewhere in a glass case that has seen empires come and go, 2 emerald hearts keep shining, no longer just jewels, but a map. Some men collect stamps. Etienne collects doors, how they breathe, where they stick, what they confess if you wait long enough in a quiet hallway and just listen. He lays the tiny letter back on the towel and looks at Anais the way a craftsman looks at a blueprint that finally makes sense. If we move this wrong, it disappears, he says softly, not the paper, the truth. Men like the one who hired me are very good at making truth to solve. Who hired you? Her voice is steady now, a conservator's voice, trained to be calm when a priceless glaze is cracking. A broker who calls himself Césaire, Etienne answers. He lives between words like stewardship and transfer. He asked me to verify a rumor, 38 seconds in the dark, nothing broken, no alarms, return everything by morning. Verification. She repeats, and the word tastes like dust. He wants the paper. He wants whatever can be priced. Etienne says, if this proves an old wrong, he will sell the remedy. If it proves nothing, he will sell the certainty that it proves nothing. They fold the letter, careful as breath, and slip it inside an archival sleeve from a drawer labeled envelopes, Myler A4. Even in crime, Anais files correctly. Walk me through how you got here. She needs a map of his map. He nods and, with a carpenter's pencil from his pocket, sketches on a blank condition report. The Richelieu wing like a spine, the guard booth like a pulse, the service panel he bridged with copper, the elevator that lags if you press 2 and 3 together. He marks the vending machine that hums too loudly, the camera dome tilted half a degree, the blind corner where motion sensors blink but never bite, the fire door that sticks unless you lift while you push. It isn't the walls that keep you safe, he says. It's the habits. Anais watches the map bloom, rooms becoming verbs, lights becoming moods. A second museum reveals itself, the one underneath the one on the brochures. My grandmother used to say the same thing about people, she murmurs. It's not beliefs that tell you the truth, it's habits. He smiles with his eyes. Your grandmother was a locksmith. She was a seamstress, a ghost of a laugh. Same profession. They plan in the supply room under lemon air, between mops and quantified order. 3 things must happen quickly and quietly: preserve, duplicate, and deliver. The original must go to someone who cannot be bought. A judge, a clerk, a journalist older than the news cycle, but the story needs copies too. High resolution images stored where a fire, a storm, or a bribe can't erase them. Photograph first, Anais says, already moving. We use collections imaging. I have night access for emergency documentation. Etienne raises a palm. Cameras, isolated. The station writes to a local drive and a redundant pack. No network. I lock the room from the inside. She is already writing the lie she'll tell the system if anyone checks. Humidity variance on the silver claw. Routine sanity capture. She does not like lying, but she is fluent now. They move like choreography, the discreet shuffle through a staff. Only corridor, the badged door that recognizes her, the dark, croon smell of chemicals and cold metal. She sets the letter beneath the copy stand, as if laying a child down to sleep, anchors the edges with microweights, breathes once, twice, then whispers to the lens, "Be kind." The shutter murmurs. Light pours over ink like a benediction. 3 angles, a raking light passed to raise the texture, a scale, a color card. She saves to a drive she names with a string of digits that look like nonsense but resolve into her grandmother's birthday backward. She prints 2 reference sets on acid, free paper because screens can go blank and paper keeps secrets in plain sight. Etienne watches, hands folded, like he's sitting pew side at a ritual he never knew he needed. When she finishes, he clears his throat. There is a cost to this, he says, not just the kind you pay to landlords. I know. She doesn't look up. I work in a building full of prices. He nods once. Then we pay it to the right account. They divide the risk. The original goes into a flat, nondescript portfolio. No logos, no romance. Etienne will carry it. No one will look twice at an old maintenance man with a folder. One set of prints hides in the most obvious sanctuary in Paris, a church donation box where the faithful and the desperate keep each other's confidences. Another goes into a bank box and eyes opens under her mother's maiden name. The digital files stay offline on a thumb drive tucked into a slipcase that says guidelines for silicate storage, the kind of title even thieves fall asleep trying to read. Soft footfalls in the hall, they freeze. The handle of the imaging lab turns. Once, twice, a guard's voice, lazy with boredom. Tout va bien, mademoiselle. Anais presses the intercom. Oui, merci. Routine shot for the silver fitting. Temperature swing. A beat. The guard yawns audibly. Bon courage, he says, and the footsteps recede. The handle sighs back to patience. Their eyes meet. Not relief, confirmation. The map is working. Who first? Etienne asks, clerk or press? Neither, she says, my mother. If something happens to me, she calls this number. She writes a contact at a small restitution nonprofit on the back of a grocery receipt, then tucks it with the church set. She thinks I catalog room temperatures for a living. She deserves to know what temperature I'm actually standing in. They step back into the corridor's gray pulse, return to the supply room, and place the letter, original, into the nondescript portfolio. Etienne slips it under his jacket like you would tuck a hand into a friend's elbow. Césaire will come, he says, not a question. He already has. She tells him about the phone call with its velvet knives, the envelope slid under her door with a photocopy of a wartime ledger, her grandmother's name, an asset transfer stamped with a seal history later called improper. He wanted me to feel watched. Do you? Yes. She squares her shoulders anyway, and I'm done letting that be the point. Phone buzz. Maul insistent Anais glances at the screen. Unknown number. She silences it. It buzzes again, then stops. A moment later, a text appears. No name, just a message. Ambiguity is expensive. Certainty is priceless. You can't afford the wrong one. She shows Etienne. He exhales through his nose, a sound like a tired hinge. He's nervous, he says. Good. Brokers only threaten when the auction is leaving without them. They set their watches. 10 minutes for the church. 20 for the bank box, 30 for the courthouse clerk who works late because paper doesn't respect office hours. They'll scatter their path with normalcy. A vending machine coffee, a nod to a night guard, a pause at a window. If anyone watches, they'll have to watch all of Paris. Last thing, Anais says, holding his gaze, promise me, if we're stopped, you take the folder and walk. I'll talk. I'm old, he says. I talk slower. You're the courier, she counters. I'm the conservator. It's my job to put the right thing in the right place and stand between it and harm. A beat, he wants to argue. He recognizes the futility. The heaviest doors are conviction. He nods. They open the supply room door and freeze. Césaire is in the corridor, not 5 meters away, flanked by 2 men who look like well-dressed parentheses. His smile is the color of a polished coin. Good evening. He says gently, as if he's walked into a rehearsed scene and is relieved everyone remembered their lines. His eyes rest on the nondescript portfolio, then lift to Etienne's face, then to Anaïs's badge. Shall we verify something together? He purrs. The museum's lights hum. Somewhere a guard coughs. The case with the emeralds sits 2 turns away, innocent as a sleeping child. Anaïs feels the letter like a second heartbeat thudding under Etienne's jacket. After you, she replies, and in that moment, every habit in the building. The elevator lag, the vending machine hum, the fire door that sticks unless you lift. Trier ranges itself into either an escape route or a trap. Then the power blinks once. A fraction, like the museum too, is deciding which truth it belongs to. Césaire stands like a comma in the sentence of the halls. Mall, curved, making you pause. The 2 men beside him are full stops. He taps his phone once, as if patting a dog. Before we all commit to poor decisions, he says, remember this, uncertainty punishes everyone. His gaze touches the portfolio under Etienne's jacket. I can make the next hours very simple. Anaïs answers like a docent correcting a plaque. Simplicity is rarely the truth, he smiles. Truth is a jewel we cut to fit the setting. She doesn't take the bait. You're blocking a fire exit. One of his men glances back. The reflex is human and priceless. Etienne uses it. He steps forward with the apologetic momentum of a maintenance worker who has to pass, issuing soft pardon sounds, angling his body so the folder is on the far side from the men. Césaire lets him because he believes control is a room with only one door and he owns it. He angles toward Anaïs, assumes the conversation is the prize, the old man an afterthought. Walk with me, he offers like a gentleman. We can talk provenance, stewardship, safe custody. I can take the fear out of this. No, Anaïs says, and she allows herself a small, exact smile, but you can follow me. She turns on her heel and starts down the corridor. It isn't bravery, it's choreography, habits, Etienne had said. The building is held up by routines, use them, they move. Anaïs a step ahead to own the pace. Etienne 3 strides back like a man half, drafted into a tour. Césaire falls in beside her, amused and curious, a cat honoring the mouse's decision to climb the stairs first. At the first junction, Anaïs turns left, not toward Richelieu, but toward a corner where the camera dome tilts half a degree and the motion sensors blink politely without recording. She isn't hiding, she is choosing a room where stories don't get edited by pixels. Where is it going? Césaire asks, conversational, harmless, lethal. The paper, don't insult our shared intelligence. To daylight, she says. You can stand in it or not. He tilts his head. Daylight burns nuance. Then perhaps the nuance should be burned. They pass the vending machine. Etienne taps a button as if thirsty. The machine clunks and whirs, a loud, blessed distraction. One of Césaire's men glances reflexively. When the paper cup drops, Etienne doesn't take it. He lets the machine spit, noise covering the whisper of a door unlatching. A service closet just beyond the machine that always looks locked, but never truly is if you lift as you push. Anaïs continues, pulling the gravity of attention with her voice. You sell custody disguised as conscience, she says softly. But objects remember hands. They don't forget pressure seals stamped wrong. They don't forget houses emptied under threat. They don't forget the people who bake bread with rings hidden in the dough so a patrol won't find them. Césaire's eyes flicker, just a pulse. And yet here we are in a state museum, curating empire as if it were a family album. Exactly, she says. So we start changing the captions. Etienne dissolves on the vending machine's exhale. The service door inhales him. In the sliver before it closes, he meets Anisa's eyes. She nods without moving her chin. He is gone. Césaire doesn't notice for 3 beats, maybe 4. When he does, it's not outrage that crosses his face. It's admiration salted with irritation. He stops walking, his men pivot, instincts suddenly awake. Old, he murmurs, is not the same as slow. Anais widens her stance enough to be an obstacle and an invitation. Follow him, and you admit intent on camera. She says, pitching her voice so the hallway carries it. We're 3 turns from the guard booth and 1 from the main stair. Choose your next habit carefully. His smile returns, practiced and bright. He extends both hands, empty. I choose conversation, mademoiselle. I always do. He gives a tiny nod. The men do not pursue. The game shifts. The service corridor is a throat between lungs. Etienne moves down it at measured speed. The way you do when running would only invite knees to betray you. Portfolio under his jacket, breath even, gaze level. He becomes what he has always been in buildings like this, part of the architecture. A man with a folder is a pipe in the wall. No one looks, no one sees. At the end of the throat, a fire door. It sticks unless you lift. He lifts, it opens into night air, a slice of the inner courtyard, small as a pocket. He steps out, closes it without noise, and joins the museum's outer rhythm, the hush of sprinklers, the distant moped, the soft interrogations of a pigeon with opinions about breadcrumbs. The church is 3 blocks away if you cut the angle and trust that the city, like a lock, opens to the right pressure. He trusts, and he walks. Inside, Anais keeps talking, not to persuade. She knows men like Césaire do not believe, they transact, but to occupy the one weapon she owns, time. Every sentence she speaks gives Etienne another 20 meters of Paris. Césaire studies her, filing away her cadences like a collector listening to the provenance of a violin. You're not built for this, he says finally. You catalog, you maintain temperatures, you keep dust out of crevices, but you don't fight. I curate, she replies. That's the most aggressive verb we've invented for truth. He laughs, delighted. I like you. You don't know me. I know your type, the faithful. You believe objects are honest if we give them the right lighting. Lighting helps. She says, so does context and witnesses. On the last word, she turns a corner and walks unannounced into the guard booth. 2 night guards look up, surprised. The booth smells like coffee and the blue of screens. She plants both hands on the counter. Question. She says cheerfully, as if this were a routine quiz. What's the policy for third-party contractors after midnight when collections imaging is in use for emergency documentation? The older guard blinks, glances at the laminated procedures like a man checking his own pulse. Contractors must be logged with purpose and supervisor sign off, he recites. If unlogged, they wait in facilities or leave. Excellent, she says. She pivots, gestures open, palm to Césaire and his shadows. These gentlemen are. Césaire's smile does not break, but it thins. He produces a badge sleeve, too pristine, too generic. The younger guard frowns. The older one lifts his eyebrows in a we will. Now, apply, friction expression. I don't appear to have your names on tonight's log, he says, slow and pleasant as drizzle. Césaire shows his palms, empty again. We'll wait in facilities. Merci. Anais says softly to the guards and tosses them the most valuable thing in the building at night, gratitude. She steps away, phone in hand. She types a message with the speed of someone who knows exactly who she trusts. On your left in 30. Lift as you push. No name. She sends it anyway. Etienne reaches St. Nicholas. Deschamps, a church with more faith and fewer tourists at 3 a.m. The side door is open for a volunteer who cleans in peace when the city sleeps. Incense ghosts the air. He walks without hurry to the votive bank, buys a candle for a coin that tastes like copper, lights it, and kneels. He doesn't pray. He remembers. He slides the envelope. One of the 2 print sets, not the original. into the donation box along with a note on lined paper. Pour la prochaine, for the next one. He has been poor long enough to know that impossible things survive in church boxes, passed hand to hand by people who understand that value and price are estranged cousins. He leaves, not straight for the bank, but by the longer walk that turns a tale into a believer that you have nowhere important to be. He buys a vending machine coffee from a boulangerie's curb unit and discards it untouched. He pauses to look at shoes in a dark shop window. He lets the city read him as harmless. The bank box is easier than faith. An after-hours kiosk, a card that isn't his but is allowed, a box registered under a name that isn't a lie but isn't the whole truth either. He places the second print set inside and closes the lid gently, as if not to wake a sleeper. Then he turns toward the Palais de Justice. His knees argue. He keeps walking. Back at the museum, Césaire's patience chooses a different door. "We're leaving," he announces to his men for the guards' benefit. "No verification tonight." To Anais he adds, intimate as breath, "But ambiguity won't protect you. It will only delay me." "Delay is all I needed," she replies. He leans fleetingly near enough that she can count the pores in his perfect skin. A word of advice. He says, "Stainless reputations stain faster than you think. By morning, you will be the problem who was on duty when irregularities occurred. I have friends who write captions, too." He walks away with the rolling stride of a man who always arrives elsewhere with explanations preloaded. The younger guard watches them go, then whistles under his breath. "C'est quoi ka procedure?" Anais says, and smiles like a person who has decided exactly where to stand when the floor shifts. Etienne climbs the last stone steps to the clerk's night drop and experiences, for the first time since the vending machine, a tremor in his resolve. Not doubt fatigue, the kind that leaks into your bones after a lifetime of lifting doors and promises. He grips the rail until the tremor becomes information rather than command. Then he feeds the original letter into a sealed evidence pouch, slides the pouch into the lockbox, and turns the crank that draws it into the after-hours belly of the court. The sound it makes is tiny. A click less than a hinge would, but the echo it sets off in him is a cathedral bell. Done, he turns and stops. A figure leans on the far column, hands in pockets. Not one of Césaire's men, too still. Too patient, the man's face is unremarkable in a way that bills itself as deliberate. Evening, the figure says. Etienne nods. Walked a long way for a piece of paper, a long way for a short truth. Etienne corrects. The man pushes off the column with a heel, not threatening, not friendly. "My employer will be disappointed." Your employer is often wrong about what lasts. The man considers that, then almost smiles. "You talk like someone who has been forgiven more than once." "Only once," Etienne says, by someone who never said the word. The man steps aside. Allures, Bon knew it. Etienne passes him, expecting the blow that doesn't come, hearing only the river arguing gently with its stones. At dawn, Anais unlocks her mother's apartment with hands that finally shake. Her mother is awake at the table, robe wrapped like armor, a mug of something herbal cooling to resignation. The landlord's letter is no longer behind the postcard. It is pinned to the fridge with a silver tack. Someone's message that being watched extends to kitchens. Anais takes it down, folds it, and sits. "There's something I have to tell you," she says, and her voice is different. Not older, just precise. It's about Grandma, and a note hidden inside a pair of earrings that shouldn't have had secrets, but did. Her mother listens with her mouth a line and her eyes two wells. At the end, she reaches across the table, lays her pommeau, corn citrus, scented over Anais's knuckles. "You'll be punished for this," she says without drama. "I know. Then we will be punished together." They hold on. By mid-morning, Césaire keeps his promise. A rumor blooms, a junior conservator's irregular access, questions about a late-night lab session, chain of custody concerns. It spreads precisely where he wants it to, inside inboxes that file under due diligence and risk. It meets at 11:07, an obstacle he didn't plan for, a clerk's timestamp and a journalist's email with an attachment, high-resolution images, scale, color card, the neat hand of a goldsmith, and a paragraph that refuses to fit inside any of his captions. The journalist replies to a very small list. The nonprofit posts a very careful essay with very sharp footnotes. The courthouse logs the intake. The museum's comms team, still on their first coffees, receives 3 queries at once asking for comment on a letter nobody was supposed to know existed. Ambiguity begins to migrate, not away, just out of Césaire's grasp. He looks at his phone. He looks at the ceiling. He chooses his next habit. He makes a call that sounds like retreat, but is actually a pivot. We will frame this as stewardship, he tells the collector on the other end, not loss. He hangs up and whispers to himself, with irritation and a touch of praise he can't help. Old is not the same as slow. Anais returns to the Louvre to find that buildings can take sides. The guard at the door stamps her badge without eye contact, but when he passes it back, his thumb lingers, a silent bond courage. In the imaging lab, the handle resists, then yields like a friend who has decided to forgive you in advance. On her desk lies a note in a hand she recognizes only because she knows every hand that moves through her wing. The glass remembers kindness. No address, no promise, just a sentence that feels like a key. She looks up at the case where the emeralds sit, twin heartbeats of green under the measured light. The placard behind them hasn't changed, yet, soon, she tells the air, "We'll change your caption." She feels her phone vibrate, a message from an unknown number, 4 words long, absent of threat and full of weather. This isn't over. Coffee, she almost laughs. Then she types back, daylight only. She pockets the phone, squares her shoulders, and turns toward the supervisor's office, where an uncomfortable meeting waits like rain gathering in a gutter. Down the hall, a camera blinks, not a stutter, a wink, and somewhere across the river, a locksmith finally sits down, lights no cigarette because he quit for the 3rd and last time last year, and listens to a radio that still believes yesterday's songs can cure today. Morning folds the Louvre into its respectable face. Meetings put on ties. Words like procedure and risk iron their collars. The memo arrives in Anais's inbox at 09:14 with a greeting that tries to sound like a handshake and settles on frost. Immediate chain of custody review, Richelieu jewelry case 17, presence requested, collections Devox, registrar moral, conservation ferry, security wriggle, legal external. Condition imaging to be repeated, object movement authorization pending. The subject line wears an aftershave she recognizes, irregularities overnight. She smooths her hair into a compromise and walks. The conference room chosen for the meeting is one of those glass-sided aquariums where people are meant to behave because everyone can see them. On the far wall, the museum's values are printed the way commandments are: stewardship. Access truth, Césaire is already inside. He is exactly where a visiting stakeholder should not be, at the table, jacket off, smiles pre-installed. He has no right to be there. He has every habit that gets him invited anyway. The external legal counsel sits beside him with a notebook that looks expensive enough to be a prop. Anais takes the chair furthest from him and closest to the door. Wriggle, head of security, clears his throat. Camera review shows no breaches, he says, but there's a discrepancy in the Richelieu case logs. The vitrine power dipped for 38 seconds at 02:13. No alarms triggered. Imaging lab logged access at 02:28, noted as sanity capture by Devox. She meets his eyes. Yes, I documented a suspected microvariance in the silver claw, ruling out thermal expansion from the HVAC cycle. Prudent, says the registrar moral, who is built like a ledger, square, heavy with entries lined with justified margins. Given the dip, we will do a full condition check under supervision. Cesaire's smile widens by a millimeter, as if the line of a song he's been humming under his breath has finally surfaced. News. Why, voila. Legal clears their throat. To avoid reputational risk, we'll need to certify that no changes have occurred to the object since the last audit, and document exactly who touched what, when, how. Anais folds her hands to keep them from telling the whole story. We should begin by reimaging the hinges, she says, raking light, if anything was. Explored, we'll see tool chatter on the pin. Agreed, says Fairy from Conservation, blunt, banged, honey-eyed, the sort of scientist who keeps her kindness behind cotton gloves. We'll move them to the micro lab, minimum handling. I'll lead. Devox, you'll assist. Cesaire leans back, satisfied. Transparency. He murmurs, as if he invented the word. They sign the movement authorization. Every pen stroke a little oath and walk the corridor like pallbearers. 2 guards peel off to hold the doors. A third carries the sealed tray, the way a priest carries a relic. Inside the micro lab, the air is careful. Lights narrow to a clean white. Fairy's hands hover over the earrings, not touching. A mother teaching a child to float. We'll start with the left hinge, she says. Devox, set raking at 30 degrees. Anais adjusts the angle until the metal grows topography. Ridgelines, valleys, the quiet geography of work. The hinge pin throws a tiny shadow that makes it look like a moon with a scar. Fairy lowers the microscope and inhales softly. There, she says. Anais leans in. In the field of view, the world is suddenly enormous. Silver becomes terrain. Scratches become roads. She finds last night's Marquetians tiny up and pivot, so delicate it reads like courtesy. But there's another mark, fresh, finer, a whispering arc on the opposite side of the pin. New tool chatter, the kind you get when someone who knows better works in a hurry. She feels heat rise under her collar. Someone opened it again, she says, or attempted. Fairy says carefully, we can't conclude more until we conclude. Cesaire finishes from the doorway where he has stationed himself for, what is the word? Theater, which is why we are all here. Wriggle steps forward. The lab is controlled. Observers behind the line, please. Cesaire obeys, gracious to the last inch. His eyes never leave the metal. Fairy motions. Devox, hinge cradle. I'll stabilize the setting. We're only inspecting. No disassembly. Anais breathes, counts 4, and uses a jeweler's tool to nudge the pin just enough to see daylight. No more. The hinge doesn't resist it, welcomes. She can feel it in her fingers, the difference between breaking a thing and asking it to tell you what it knows. A sliver detaches from the hinge's inner seam and flutters down like a snowflake. Time briefly stands still. It lands on the blotter, not the goldsmith's hand. Modern paper, cut too clean. 4 words in a font that isn't ink. It's toner. Ambiguity is expensive. No signature, no romance. Just a shove, wearing a proverb. The room exhales in 3 different languages at once. Who placed that? Moral demands, already reaching for forms, for procedure to climb into. How would such a foreign body enter? This is evidence. Wriggle says, stepping between hands and paper, already snapping photos with a department phone that signs each frame with date and latitude. Fairy doesn't swear often. She swears now. We halt, she says. No further manipulation until we secure chain of custody for the intruding fragment. Anais stares at the words until they blur. The phrase is a fingerprint without ridges, a line from a text, a sentence a man used like a calling card hours ago in a corridor that pretends to be neutral. Cesaire produces a face of professional concern so polished it reflects. Well, he says softly, as if offering comfort after a tiny funeral that complicates absolutely everything, or clarifies it. Anais says, and her voice surprises even her. Someone tampered with a heritage object, then tried to script the narrative. Who would do that? Legal asks, eyes sliding everywhere but one direction. Someone for whom ambiguity is product. Anais answers, lifting her gaze to meet Cesaire's. And certainty inventory. He shows his palms, a magician's empty hands. Mademoiselle, if you have accusations, I recommend you bring them with proof. Wriggle slides the lab phone into an evidence envelope. We'll get the proof, he says. We'll start with access logs and badge audits, and we'll pull the camera above the East Service stair that fails every other Tuesday. The last line is a quiet bullet. In-house, they've all joked about that camera. The jokes stop now. Fairy nods at Anais. Reseat the pin, she says, steady. We treat the earrings as contaminated, condition images as is, no more movement until the magistrate gives guidance. Anais sets the pin back with a touch that feels like apology. The hinge closes with the smallest sigh, like a child pretending to go to sleep. They document, they seal, they sign. Procedure builds its fort. As they finish, Morrel's phone buzzes 3 times in urgent trills, never a good sound when you curate quiet objects. He reads, reddens, looks up. The Cour d'Appel clerk has posted an intake docket. He says, a filing regarding a historical restitution claim. An attachment is circulating. Our press line has 3 requests for comment, and his mouth flattens. The first inquiry is not from the culture desk. It's from finance. Of course it is. Fairy mutters, price before provenance. In the hallway, other phones begin to vibrate. News acts like fire in museums. You're trained never to run, to walk fast in one direction. Wriggle pockets the bagged lab phone. We lock down access to the case, only conservation and security. Registrar in oversight. DeVox, you don't touch anything alone, not even a doorknob. I understand, she says. He lowers his voice. They'll look at you first because you were on the log. Keep your steps exact. Your enemies are counting. I intend to give them math they can't solve. He almost smiles. Bon. They escort the earrings back to the case like dignitaries who have accidentally learned gossip. In the corridor, staff stand in small clusters pretending to talk about lunch. The rumor has already grown legs and a surname. At the glass, Anais feels the same tug she felt the night before, the sense that the case is listening. She slides the tray into position. Fairy rearms the vitrine. The LED glows a calm green, the color of compliance or of deep water. Césaire stands with his hands in his pockets, immaculate, eyes soft, a man making weather with a look. I'm sorry, he says to the air, truly, no one wants objects like these to be politicized. Everything we steal language from becomes political. Fairy replies without looking at him. He nods, serenely deflected. Do let me know how I can help. You already have, Anais says. He inclines his head the way a duelist does before the signal. When he is gone, the corridor exhales something that is not relief so much as clarity. Fairy touches the glass with the back of her gloved knuckle. An affection she'd deny if asked. We'll fix your caption. She whispers to the emerald hearts, even if we have to staple it to the sun. At noon, Anais sits alone in the imaging lab, lights low, the raking lamp a thin blade on her table. She scrolls through the morning's micrographs until the tool marks feel like forests she's hiked. Old scrape, new scrape, the little arc that is Etienne saying sorry with a pin. Her phone buzzes once. Unknown number. A photo arrives, her face in profile from last night, leaning over the copy stand. The angle is slightly high, like a ceiling camera's dream. There's a caption, daylight only. She swallows. Her reply is a single word, Taugers. Another text flashes in, this one from Fairy. Press request for on-record comment. I'll handle. Stay in lab. A second later from Wriggle, badge audit. 1 duplicate ping 05, 12 on East Service stair. Ghost badge, someone cloned, then working theory tamper post, closure, keep doors locked. She types without lifting her eyes, understood. The lab is very quiet when the door handle moves, not rattles turns. Slowly, politely, the way a person turns a handle when they expect to be allowed, Anais freezes, then stands with a calm she doesn't feel. Lab occupied. She calls, procedure, please check with security. Silence. Then the softest tap, not a fist, a ring against wood. She takes 2 steps, engages the second deadbolt, and sets her phone to video, as much witness as weapon. Security has the corridor. She says, louder, "If you have authorization, you can come back with them. Otherwise, please leave." Another tap, then nothing. She waits the prescribed 30-count, breath measured. When she finally peeks through the fisheye, the hallway is empty. No shoes, no shadow, no patience. On the floor just left of the threshold, someone has slid a strip of paper under the door, a museum feedback card, the kind tourists used to write "more benches please" and "too cold in the Dutch wing." 4 words, in pencil this time, not toner. The same 4. Ambiguity is expensive. She picks it up with tweezers and drops it into an evidence envelope she labels in her neat hand. Threat implied. Corridor 1218. Then she does what she came back to the room to keep doing. She opens a new image file and begins writing a caption that starts telling the truth, even if it has to start as a footnote. The first sentence fights its way out of her chest and onto the screen. These earrings have been loved, displayed, hidden, tampered with, and today asked to speak for themselves. She is 3 words into the next line when her screen splits. An internal alert slides over her cursor. Environmental variance detected, case 17, +0. 6 degrees C over baseline, humidity at threshold, auto page, conservation, security, no siren, just a pulse. Buildings don't scream, they blink. Annie stands so fast her chair kisses the floor. She snatches the lab radio, ferry, wriggle, case 17 pinged, readouts shifting. Through the window she can already see the glass of the vitrine shimmering slightly, as if the case has started to breathe too fast. Her phone buzzes a final time. 1 line, no number, no perfume. Captions are mine. She looks at the emeralds across the room, 2 green hearts under glass, and feels the hinge of the day swing wide. Not today. She says to the case, to the earrings, to whoever is listening. Not anymore. She runs. The alarm isn't a siren, it's a pulse in the walls. Museums don't scream, they blink. The readout climbs another whisper +0. 7 degrees C, humidity at threshold, and the vitrine's LED, which prefers the color of obedience, begins to think about turning amber. Annie runs, her badge kisses the micro-lab door, and the corridor opens like a throat. Fairy's shoes appear at the far end, flat, fast, purposeful. Wriggle arrives from the other direction with 2 guards and the particular stillness of a man who's been waiting his whole career for this kind of quiet disaster. Readouts, he asks without stopping. Temperature drift, humidity flirting with the ceiling. Annie says, "It looks like a false positive, patterns too clean, or the beginning of a real one." Fairy replies, "It doesn't matter, procedure is procedure." They arrive at case 17. The emeralds sit like 2 green lungs in the undersea calm of the display. There is nothing outwardly wrong. There never is, at first, when air learns to lie. Fairy's palms hover over the control tablet. "Let's not open," she says, the way a mother whispers to a fevering child, "unless we must." Wriggle, motion logs clean. He says, "No entry since the return." The case is intact, but the sensor line is showing a local anomaly near the bottom right corner. Localized heat, Fairy says. Like a small sun someone hid. She glances at Annie's, and the look means the hinge yesterday, the toner snowflake this morning, now the air. He is writing footnotes in the building. External thermal, Annie says. Could be a strip. There's a 1mm seam at the access panel, enough to slide an element in if the gasket's tired, or if someone tired it. Wriggle says. He keys his radio. East stair camera eyes now on it. A voice crackles back. Feed returning. Fairy breathes. We need to lower the variance without popping the glass. Dehumidify the microclimate. We can hug the case. Annie says. Portable desiccant collar. Slow draw. If it's a fake heat spike, the humidity is the hook. It won't move naturally. Go, Fairy says. They move Annie's to the emergency closet where things with ugly names hide in pretty buildings. She drags a mat, gray ring, lightweight, engineered to wrap a vitrine's base without touching the glass, and clicks it into place. Tiny fans purr. The case inhales drier air like a rescued swimmer. The humidity readout backs away from the cliff by half a point. The temperature holds steady, defiant. It wants to be dramatic, Fairy murmurs. We refuse, the radio hisses. East stair shows nothing abnormal. 2 cleaners, 1 conservator at 11:32, no one at sensor height since. But the fire door log shows a lift and push at 12:09. Anais feels it behind her eyes, the way Etienne's map of habits overlays the building like a second set of lungs. Lift as you push that door, that corner, on my 3, Wriggle tells the guards. Check the fire door. If there's a strip tucked in the gasket, I want it bagged, marked, and introduced to a magistrate before it ever sees daylight again. They jog away on quiet souls. Fairy keeps her palms above the tablet like a healer refusing despair. Hold, Cherie, she tells the case, breathe with me. The LED wavers, winks, returns to green. The humidity ticks down, another half point. The temperature trembles and settles, the way a fever will when it remembers a body is not a battlefield. Good, Anais says, it's artificial, it's losing the argument. Fairy lifts her eyes, so who gave it the script? Before anyone can answer, a voice floats from down the corridor. Pleasant, amused, barely amplified, captions are mine. Césaire. He isn't in the corridor. His voice arrives from the ceiling speaker over the far junction. A relic of some long ago audio tour system that facilities never bothered to remove. Wriggle's radio snaps. We have patchwork audio on old tour lines. The booth says, tight with anger. Someone piggybacked an input. Tracing. Fairy's jaw sets. We don't pause because a man found a microphone. Anais nods, bends, and lets her eyes become instruments. They're the faintest shimmer at the base seam where glass meets plinth. Not light, adhesive, thin as a whisper. If you didn't love cases, you would never see it. Here, she says, there's a foreign at the seam. It's not inside, stuck to the outside. The element is probably passing heat through the plinth to the glass. Non-invasive removal, Fairy says. No solvents, cold blade, patience, prayers. Anais takes the micro spatula the way a violinist lifts the bow. With your permission. Granted. She slides the blade into the seam and lifts by amounts too small to name. The adhesive size, a sliver of something pliant and mean peels back, a micro heater strip, the kind used to defog camera housings, wired to nothing visible. What's power? Fairy asks. Anais traces the strip's tail with tweezers to the back edge of the plinth. They're kissed against the wood, a coin battery thinner than shame. It shouldn't be there, it is. She lifts both into the air, holds them like a dead moth, and drops them into an evidence envelope Wriggle has ready without being asked. He seals it with a strip of red that looks like a small, decisive wound. Your building is bleeding, he says quietly. The LED returns to a steady, compliant green. The humidity nestles back into baseline like a child pulled under a blanket. The temperature steps down, point by obedient point. Silence unknots in their throats. Wriggle's radio crackles. Fire door gasket, got it. A second strip, same make. Bagged. Stairwell camera finally coughed up a face on a reflection. Just a jawline in the brass kick. Plate. Facilities jacket. No badge. Ghost badge earlier, Anais says. Clone last night. Now a jacket. He's stacking multiples. If he didn't have the law, he would have choreography. Fairy sets her hand, gloved, careful, against the glass for a heartbeat, not touching, just near enough that heat and care can talk. Back to baseline, she says. We hold as is. The ceiling speaker pops once more, well handled. Césaire's voice purls, calmer than any man deserves to be at a crime scene. You'll make a fine quote later, Madame Fairy. Wriggle doesn't look up when he talks to the booth. Kill tour lines, all of them, today, not in a meeting next week. Cutting. The booth replies, and the ceiling goes blessedly dumb. Fairy straightens, turns to Anais. The lab, she says. We lock it. We copy our copies. Then we begin building the caption this object deserves. Press will ask for statements. Wriggle warns, give none without counsel, but write. If we don't begin telling this ourselves, someone else will sell it to us. They move as a flock back to the micro lab, the desiccant collar humming on its timer, the envelope with the heater strip, and the coin cell cradled like a relic in Wriggle's grip. The hallways pretend to be neutral. They are not, they lean if you pay attention. Inside the lab, Anais feels the hairs rise on her forearms, not fear, recognition. The room has been touched, not a thing out of place, except a thing out of place. On the copy stand, the color card has turned a quarter turn. No one turns a color card unless they're using it. Don't move, she says, almost to the air. She crouches, eyes scanning the baseboard, the light stand, the power strip, the edge of the desk where earlier she laid a pen and now finds a different pen pretending to be hers. She opens the pen. The ink cartridge is real. The barrel, heavy, too heavy, unscrews to reveal a pinhole lens that looks at the world with a blank philosophy. Camera, she says. Wriggle's evidence kit appears as if conjured. The camera goes into a bag with a label that will turn into a log that will turn into a bad day for someone. Fairy exhales through her nose. He was here while we were 20 meters away teaching Air how to behave. He wants an edit suite, Anais says flatly, a way to cut the story inside the room that makes the story. He wants to be our color correction. Wriggle touches his radio like a talisman. Facilities jacket, ghost badge, heater strips, piggyback audio, a spy pen. That's not a contractor, that's a team. Or a single man with an expensive shopping list and a belief, Fairy says. Either way, we cut his hands off at the wrists by doing what he can't, writing a caption that doesn't need his microphone. Anais sits. The chair does not squeal, it approves. She opens a new document. Her fingers hover, then land. The first paragraph arrives clean, shaped by heat and by the kind of quiet that has decided to be active. Object, pair of emerald and diamond earrings attributed to Empress Marie-Louise, early 19th C. Present condition, stable, evidence of recent unauthorized manipulation, see notes. Historical note, newly surfaced letter by Goldsmith Jean, Baptiste Arm, and 1008-112 indicates private commission, partial restitution from assets transferred under duress. Letter delivered to court, see docket hash. Interpretive note, display to include provenance text acknowledging contested ownership narratives and acts of concealment past and present. She writes like a conservator and a witness, each sentence a plank laid over a river. Her phone buzzes, a text from a number she now names Etienne, though she never asked him for it. Courthouse took it. I watched the clerk put the pouch in the big belly, then coffee. I am where I belong, a chair. She smiles into the glow. Merci. The case tried to have an opinion. We disagreed. A beat. Old is not the same as slow, he replies. It is often the same as patient. She is about to answer when a new message lands from an unknown number. The particular smoothness of a man who refuses to be a stranger in any room. Daylight can be forgiving, mademoiselle. It also casts shadows. Watch your mother. The words are simple. They catch her spine like a fishhook. She stands so fast the chair scolds her. The room shifts, not physically, just in meaning. Fairy reads her face like a checklist. What? He's widening the caption, Anais says, and her voice does not shake. To include my kitchen. Wriggle's eyes darken. We put a car there. Now, I'll call her. Anais says, call after we get to the car. Wriggle replies. You don't say street names on open lines. Fairy looks at the screen where the draft caption waits. First lines laid, the rest of the page white as a complicated future. Go. She says, I'll keep writing, because that, too, is protection. Anais nods, grabs her jacket, her badge, the courage these rooms have been teaching her, and moves. She is halfway down the corridor when the building, which has been deciding all morning which side it belongs to, at last tells her plainly. The old tour speaker pops once, not with Cesaire's silk, but with a whisper of static, then a voice like a hand on a shoulder. Lift as you push. Etienne's message says in her memory, not on the speaker, and she almost laughs. Of course, habits, doors, the map of kindness under the map of tricks. Outside, the day has the color of pewter and the taste of metal. Wriggle's car idles at the curb, consequence humming in its engine. As she climbs in, she sends one text to one person who will understand all the parts without asking for a single extra piece. Daylight only. Then, to her mother, I'm on my way. Don't open the door for anyone. Not even me. I'll call from the landing. Lift as you push. She puts the phone face down on her thigh and looks through the windshield at the city that has decided to become a chessboard. Seatbelt, Wriggle says. She clicks at home. Let's change the caption, she says. The car moves. The museum recedes. The emeralds keep breathing. Steady now under glass that understands finally what it is there to do. The alarm isn't a siren, it's a pulse in the walls. Museums don't scream, they blink. The readout climbs another whisper +0. 7 degrees C, humidity at threshold, and the vitrine's LED, which prefers the color of obedience, begins to think about turning amber. Anais runs, her badge kisses the micro-lab door, and the corridor opens like a throat. Fairy's shoes appear at the far end, flat, fast, purposeful. Wriggle arrives from the other direction with 2 guards and the particular stillness of a man who's been waiting his whole career for this kind of quiet disaster. Readouts? He asks without stopping. Temperature drift, humidity flirting with the ceiling. Anais says, it looks like a false positive, patterns too clean, or the beginning of a real one. Fairy replies, it doesn't matter, procedure is procedure. They arrive at case 17. The emeralds sit like 2 green lungs in the undersea calm of the display. There is nothing outwardly wrong. There never is at first when air learns to lie. Fairy's palms hover over the control tablet. Let's not open, she says, the way a mother whispers to a fevering child, unless we must. Wriggle, motion logs clean. He says, no entry since the return. The case is intact, but the sensor line is showing a local anomaly near the bottom right corner. Localized heat, Fairy says. Like a small sun someone hid. She glances at Anais and the look means the hinge yesterday, the toner snowflake this morning, now the air. He is writing footnotes in the building. External thermal. Anais says, could be a strip. There's a 1mm seam at the access panel, enough to slide an element in if the gas gets tired. Or if someone tired it, Wriggle says. He keys his radio, east stair camera eyes now. On it, a voice crackles back. Feed returning. Fairy breathes. We need to lower the variance without popping the glass. Dehumidify the microclimate. We can hug the case. Anais says. Portable desiccant collar. Slow draw. If it's a fake heat spike, the humidity is the hook it won't move naturally. Go, Fairy says. They move Anais to the emergency closet where things with ugly names hide in pretty buildings. She drags a matte, gray ring, lightweight, engineered to wrap a vitrine's base without touching the glass, and clicks it into place. Tiny fans purr, the case inhales drier air like a rescued swimmer, the humidity readout backs away from the cliff by half a point, the temperature holds steady, defiant, it wants to be dramatic, Fairy murmurs. We refuse, the radio hisses, east stair shows nothing abnormal, 2 cleaners, 1 conservator at 11:32, no one at sensor height since, but the fire door log shows a lift end, push at 12:09. Anais feels it behind her eyes, the way Etienne's map of habits overlays the building like a second set of lungs. Lift as you push, that door, that corner, on my 3. Wriggle tells the guards. Check the fire door. If there's a strip tucked in the gasket, I want it bagged, marked, and introduced to a magistrate before it ever sees daylight again. They jog away on quiet souls. Fairy keeps her palms above the tablet like a healer refusing despair. Hold, chérie, she tells the case. Breathe with me. The LED wavers, winks, returns to green. The humidity ticks down, another half point. The temperature trembles and settles, the way a fever will when it remembers a body is not a battlefield. Good, Anais says. It's artificial. It's losing the argument. Fairy lifts her eyes. So who gave it the script? Before anyone can answer, a voice floats from down the corridor. Pleasant, amused, barely amplified. Captions are mine. Césaire. He isn't in the corridor. His voice arrives from the ceiling speaker over the far junction. A relic of some long-ago audio tour system that facilities never bothered to remove. Wriggle's radio snaps. We have patchwork audio on old tour lines. The booth says, tight with anger. Someone piggybacked an input. Tracing. Ferry's jaw sets. We don't pause because a man found a microphone. Anais nods, bends, and lets her eyes become instruments. They're the faintest shimmer at the base, seam where glass meets plinth. Not light, adhesive, thin as a whisper. If you didn't love cases, you would never see it. Here, she says, there's a foreign at the seam. It's not inside, stuck to the outside. The element is probably passing heat through the plinth to the glass. Non-invasive removal, Ferry says. No solvents, cold blade, patience, prayers. Anais takes the micro spatula the way a violinist lifts the bow. With your permission, granted. She slides the blade into the seam and lifts by amounts too small to name. The adhesive sighs. A sliver of something pliant and mean peels back. A micro heater strip, the kind used to defog camera housings, wired to nothing visible. What's power? Ferry asks. Anais traces the strip's tail with tweezers to the back edge of the plinth. They're kissed against the wood. A coin battery thinner than shame. It shouldn't be there, it is. She lifts both into the air, holds them like a dead moth, and drops them into an evidence envelope Wriggle has ready without being asked. He seals it with a strip of red that looks like a small, decisive wound. Your building is bleeding, he says quietly. The LED returns to a steady, compliant green. The humidity nestles back into baseline like a child pulled under a blanket. The temperature steps down, point by obedient point. Silence unknots in their throats. Wriggle's radio crackles. Fire door gasket, got it. A second strip, same make, bagged. Stairwell camera finally coughed up a face on a reflection. Just a jaw line in the brass kick plate. Facilities jacket, no badge. Ghost badge earlier, Anais says. Clone last night, now a jacket. He's stacking multiples. If he didn't have the law, he would have choreography. Ferry sets her hand, gloved, careful, against the glass for a heartbeat, not touching, just near enough that heat and care can talk. Back to baseline, she says, we hold as is. The ceiling speaker pops once more, well handled. Césaire's voice pearls.